We have a special recognition we'll get to in a few minutes as well, but this time, if you'll please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for the many blessings you offer all of us each day. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to live and work here in Calhoun and Gordon County. We ask your special blessings on those in Texas suffering flooding and other damage from the hurricane. Be with them. Be also with those in our community who are sick or facing troubles of one sort or another. Those who have lost loved ones recently. Be with them as only you can. Also, we ask that you be with our troops around the world as they're protecting our liberties and offering us the opportunity to do many of the things that we take for granted. We ask your special blessings on the employees of the city of Calhoun. We ask that you be with us here tonight as we deliberate the business of the city, and ask that you help us to make decisions that would be pleasing to you and in the best interest of the majority. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody's had an opportunity to look through the proposed agenda for tonight's meeting. There is one item under Mayor's comments. We have a special recognition that we'll get to in just a few minutes, but if there are no additions or corrections, to have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Also in your packet, you had a copy of the minutes of the regular council meeting that was held on August the 14th. If there are no additions or corrections to those minutes, to have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Also, there was an executive session meeting held the same night on August 14th. If there are no additions or corrections to those executive session minutes, do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I'd like to remind everybody that the City of Calhoun offices will be closed on September the 4th. This is to allow everybody to observe Labor Day. Also, we have the qualifying for the city election closed Friday at 4:30, and the candidates qualifying to run are City Council post number 3, currently held by Matt Barton. It is Matt Barton signed up, as well as being challenged by Mr. George Crowley. Council post number 4, currently held by Mr. David Hammond. Qualifying to run are Ray Mitchell Denman, Mr. Alvin Long, and Mr. Ed Moyer. Calhoun City School Board post number 1, Andy Baxter. Post number 2, Rhoda Washington. Post number 3, David Scoggins. All of the school board posts were unopposed. There's also several dates that I'd like for you to remember, and that is October the 10th. This is the last day to register for the election, and the election is held on November the 7th. That is October the 10th. On October the 16th, that's the first day of early voting. Voters will also, which I think very important, they will have the opportunity to vote to continue the SPLOST. There are many projects that the city has put on there, and I think people would be like what the projects are. One of them is a continuation and completion of Peter Street. We will, on tonight's meeting, we have the opportunity to vote on the engineering and surveying work to be done on phase 2, but this on the SPLOST to be completion. There's a lot of recreation possibilities such as renovating the existing building. The tennis courts will be resurfaced. The yellow playground will be updated and all as well. There's some sewer utility work to be done to an advancement there. So I would like for you to look at it closely and give it every consideration. Remind you one more time that it's a continuation and not a new tax. Also, there will be the opportunity for a non-binding vote on 2 items, one of those being the changing the number of council members from 4 to 6. The other will be to the possibility of putting in term limits. Those term limits for the mayor would be for 2 terms, and for the council, 3 terms. And at this time, we have...
Mr. Mayor, if I could, before we go further, with regard to the referendum, there's apparently a little confusion about what we as a council voted unanimously. I've had several people ask me if I indeed favored term limits, because that's what the council had voted, but that was not what we voted. The unanimous vote was to put this on the ballot. And I have no problem whatsoever with doing that, and if it is the opinion of the majority of voters, then I have no problem with changing and going with it. But personally, I do not favor term limits. I think we have term limits in the system as it currently exists. It's called an election. About a year ago, I guess when we first began discussing this, Eddie or Paul or the 2 of them together went back and pulled some numbers, and I don't have that research in front of me, but as I recall, it started with about 1960 or 1962, somewhere along there. So 50 plus years anyway of city council data showed that the average term of service among city council members during that time period was 7-point-something years, so just slightly less than what would be 2 terms. That tells you that either a lot of people serve 1 term and find out that doing this is not something they really want to do, and so they choose not to run again, or they serve a term or 2 and someone that the electorate likes better comes along and they get voted out of office. So I think the system that exists works, and when that exception comes along, somebody who's willing to serve 3 or more terms, to tell them not only that they can't do it, but then to tell the voters that they can no longer vote for that person. You know, it seems to be, I don't know, a little unfair maybe, but that's just my opinion. But just for those out there who may question, you know, what each of us up here may favor or not favor, that's where I am with regard to it. But again, I have no problem at all with us offering the opportunity for the voters to express their opinion. And if indeed they say that, hey, we like the idea of term limits, then certainly I'm okay with it. But just personally, I think we have that opportunity already. So,
just to clarify, though, I mean, you can still run for council after 3 terms. You just have to, like Mr. Crowley was on there 3 terms. He's been off for 2 years now, and now he's running against me. If we had term limits and he was off for term limits, he's running again. That's perfectly fine. So you're still able to.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm just making sure that was clear. You can still run.
And let me, in case somebody didn't know where I stand on term limits, I believe in them completely. I really do. I look around at America on the federal and state levels, and I'm dissatisfied. I'm not sure we're ever going to change things from the top down, but I'm willing to be the first person to raise my hand to try to change it from the bottom up.
I made the observation last year when once again we voted unanimously to put it on the ballot and let the people decide. That's what it's about. If the people come out and reject it, then they've spoken. That's what America is. It's a free system. At the same time, I said if we put term limits on the ballot, I would voluntarily resign. I did. We've got individuals here running for post 4 that are highly qualified, former elected officials, and the public's going to have some great choices. But if we want things to change, we can't wait for somebody else to change. We have to be willing to do it ourselves. Politics needs to be better. We ought to demand better. We ought to expect better. And if the public comes out with I'd say with a 60% in favor vote, both on term limits or on expanding the council, then this council that is seated needs to request in a resolution that Representative Meadows take it to the floor, to the General Assembly, so that it can be approved. I know he personally believes in it and spoke about it publicly about the High School Athletic Association wanting to know why they didn't have term limits. Well, if it applies to the High School Athletic Association, why would it not apply to the governing body of our communities? Let me talk for just a second about going from 4 to 6. And I'll be talking about this all the way through the election date. But I'm going to ask Mr. Peterson to pull up Category C size cities. Those are cities the size of Calhoun. And we'll get a number of how many elected officials there are in each of those cities. We know Rome, Dalton, and Cartersville. You hear me reference it quite often. Those are communities twice our size that have already experienced what we're experiencing now. They elected to go to a larger membership board because as the community grows, you need a broader opinion. We've all been up here for many years. We know it's tough governing. I've told a couple of the guys, I didn't have to tell George and didn't have to tell Alvin, but I told a couple, or Ray, but I told a couple of guys the thing about elected office is you're going to offend 50% of the people 100% of the time, or numbers similar to that. So it's not an easy job, and my hats are off to all 3 of these men sitting in the audience for getting back in, throwing their hat in the ring. And with term limits, you'll be able to do the same thing. You'll just break the status quo and the power grip so that more people, look how many people are running this year. 4 people are running. That's what an open seat does. I served my 3 terms. That's what I believed in. I did get to serve Mr. Shelton's partial term when he passed away in office. I am proud of the fact I got to represent the citizens of Calhoun. I hope I didn't let many of you down. I know it disappointed some of you. But I have served every day trying to do the very best that I could do. This is something I believe in. It's okay for us not to have an agreement up here. That's perfectly normal. That's how you get to the very best answer. And before I start sermonizing, I'll just say, go to the polls. Vote for the candidate of your choice. Vote for or against term limits. Vote for or against changing the number. Anybody who has a problem with people choosing what they want, there's a problem with that individual. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for those comments. I'll do it very quickly. I'm in agreement with Councilman Edwards. I oppose the term limits for various reasons, and from a lot of research has been done and so forth, but I do not, the research that I've done show no value in in local elections. When Councilman Hammond spoke of state and federal elections, possibly so, but on a local level, I don't. And as far as increasing the number of council members, I would venture to say probably since the last census, we probably haven't had an increase in population of about probably less than 500. So that's just my opinion. Plus the fact that I think it needs to be kept in mind that increasing the council from 4 to 6 would be a yearly expense probably of in the vicinity of $40,000, and in some years greater than 40.
Let me add one more point since you brought that up, Mr. Mayor. This week, probably Friday of this week, we're going to get a determination from MEAG, the Municipal Electrical Association of Georgia. They're going to make a decision whether the cost of Plant Vogtle 3 and 4, which in theory is approaching $20 billion, is such a large override in cost that they're going to close the project down. The South Carolina one has already been closed down. City of Calhoun invested $250 million over a multi-year period for Vogtle 3 and 4. Guys, $250 million, that's $250 million. What is $40,000 if you make a better decision on a $250 million project? Now, knowing what we know now, we would have done things differently. But Larry, I don't think anybody knows what we know now 8 years ago when we started debating this, do they? But where the rubber meets the road is if they close it down, it's going to impact every single ratepayer in the city of Calhoun. So be watching the news. I know the New York Times and the AJC have had mass articles about this, and there's pro-con. Some people are for nuclear energy, some people are not. Just understand it's going to impact our community. That's why you need a lot of good people researching all the issues, trying to bring as much diversity of thought to the table so that when you finally commit the taxpayers and the ratepayers for projects of these magnitudes, you've made the very best decision you can possibly make. And then you move on.
I appreciate that. And even though I personally find the two items totally unrelated, but I will say this, that like Councilman Hammond said, that 8 years ago, I think the best decision was made at the time moving forward. And you got to look back, and when the decisions were made, it's very difficult to look 8, 10, 15 years after and criticize the decision that was made at that time based on the information and so forth provided. But at this time, we do have a special award, and at this time, I'll recognize Mr. Edwards to talk about the award.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Calhoun Police Department has been awarded first place in the Governor's Office of Highway Safety's Governor's Challenge. This is a competition between law enforcement agencies throughout Georgia, and the awards are given by categories of, based on department size. Calhoun is a Category 3, which means they have between 26 and 50 officers. The awards program was designed to highlight outstanding achievements in highway safety enforcement and education. Agencies are graded on their approach and effectiveness of their overall highway safety programs. Points are established for policy, training, recognition, public information, enforcement, and effectiveness of operations. While it's aggravating to have to slow down when you think you're, in a hurry to get somewhere, and you want to. It's okay if I break the speed limit laws, but not everybody else, So, but that's not the way it works. And the results of obeying speed limits and other laws are directly related to fewer accidents, and the severity of damage and injury is not as great when accidents do occur at lower speeds. Tens of thousands of cars and trucks are on our city streets every day. State Route 53 near Walmart, there's 30,000 vehicles pass by there on an average day. South Wall Street near Webb's Radio, there's 20,000 vehicles a day. Line Street near First Methodist Church averages around 7,000 cars a day. So we have a responsibility to make motorists aware that traffic enforcement is on the job, and every one of us have a stake in highway safety. One thing I've noticed over the years is the 16, 17, and 18-year-old drivers are aware that the Calhoun Police Department seems to be everywhere. And this is an ongoing and important reminder to our youngest drivers about responsibility and safety. From speeding to seat belts, no license, DUIs, and other traffic violations, the Calhoun Police Traffic Operations is on the job 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the safety of all of us. And I would just like to say job well done and congratulations, and thank you to those of you here, and then to those who are part of the department who obviously can't be here because they're out doing their jobs, or maybe enjoying a little well-deserved time off. But again, thank you all, and congratulations to all of you. And to you too, Chief.
It is quite an honor. I look at some of the names on the trophy itself of people that have, or divisions that have won this in the past, and I'm proud to see Calhoun on that trophy as well. But if y'all will come forward, would be honored to have our picture made with you, and with the plaques and the trophy, and just. And I told Gary the only thing that could have been better than this would have been brought the car back also. I'm beginning to think it's, excuse me.
No.
I'm beginning to think it's rigged. Is this the third time Gainesville's won it?
Second or third?
Yeah. Third. I was thinking it was the third.
That's cool. Each their own.
In the public hearings, we had one item that was tabled at the last meeting. It was variance request of 15 feet. The request was by Lidl Operations, and I think everybody received a request from Terry Brumlow, agent for Lidl, that they would like to continue this table until the next meeting that would be held on September the 11th. Under old business, we have the second reading of an annexation and zoning request. This request is for R1B. It is for 0.17 acres. It is at 108 Yarborough Street. Request by Judy Curtis. September the 7th is the Zoning Advisory Board meeting, and the public hearing will be scheduled for September the 11th. Also have the second reading of an annexation and zoning request of R1. This is for 0.83 acres. It is at 113 Peter Street by Maria Fitz-Salas. Zoning Advisory Board on the 7th, public hearing on the 11th. Second reading of an annexation and zoning request of R1 for 1.04 acres. This is at 117 Peter Street by Israel Vasquez. Zoning Advisory Board on September the 7th, public hearing on September the 11th. Also have the second reading of a zoning change request. This request is from Industrial G to R2. It is for 1.95 acres at 203 Edmund Street. The request is by Haley Stevens. Zoning Advisory Board will meet on September the 7th to consider this, and the public hearing will be on September the 11th. I have a second reading of a variance request to reduce minimum square footage by 500 feet. It would be from 800 square feet to 300 square feet. This is also for 203 Edmund Street, and the request is by Haley Stevens. Once again, Zoning Advisory Board on the 7th, public hearing on the 11th. Also have the second reading of a rear setback variance. The request is for 10 feet. It is to reduce the minimum distance from 20 to 10 feet. The request is for 127 Oakhurst Terrace, Northeast. Request by Stephen Smith. Zoning Advisory Board for September the 7th, public hearing on the 11th. Also have the second reading of a beer pouring license request. This request is by Suhail Merchant, World of Wings. Businesses will be located at 171 West Belmont Drive in Suite 7. And the proposed store manager will be named prior to the public hearing, which is scheduled for September the 11th. Under new business, we have the first reading of an ordinance to amend, strike, or change certain articles, divisions, and sections of Part 2, Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, Business, Article 3, Regulatory License and Business Regulations, Division 5, Recycling Process Center for purchase, sale, or processing of post-consumer or post-industrial materials to add Section 22-322. What this ordinance is, I know everybody's noticed around town some drop-off collection centers for recycling the boxes that sometimes are just brought into the area and put there. Normally they're for clothing as well as shoes. There are several locations around town where these can be done without usage of these boxes, and quite often these boxes, the materials that are put in them are taken back and perhaps resold and not by a charitable organization. But one thing that we've noticed around the city, there are also quite often a collection for everything from furniture or just whatever somebody decides to drop off. So it was the council will consider this for possible adoption. Once again, public hearing will be scheduled for September the 25th. Also have the first reading of an ordinance to amend, strike, or change certain articles, divisions, and sections of Part 2, Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Zoning, to repeal all conflicting ordinances or ordinance provisions, to clarify certain language or definitions, and to increase the maximum building height for District C2, General Business District, and Industrial G, General Industrial District. And our current ordinance calls for a height of 60 feet, and this is on there for consideration to increase this to 75 feet. George, you have anything to add to either of those?
Actually, just to clarify, it's 75 feet or 4 stories, whichever is greater, because that way, with what we were running into with the variances at the ZAB was that the need for the variances weren't so much for the structure, but the required franchise plans. And so, for example, parapet or some kind of awning or something to that effect, So while we're setting it to 75, which is the average of what we've been doing, this would allow us to not necessarily have to consider a variance if they have to have an extra 5 feet because 4 stories. Some of the more economic hotels like H2 and Indigo tend to have 10-foot ceilings on concrete slabs as opposed to 8-foot ceilings. So that was just a build-in to pad it a little bit, but the idea is to keep it within 4 stories or 75 feet, whichever is the greater of the two.
All right, thank you. Now the first reading of a beer package license request by Muhammad Kawar Ansari. This is doing business as Food Mart. It's located at 461 Harris Beamer Road. Mr. Ansari will be the store manager. Public hearing is scheduled for September the 25th. I have a revolving loan request. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Peterson for a report concerning that request.
The revolving loan committee met last Friday to discuss a transfer loan of ownership of B Kids Academy. The asking price from Larry Vickery is $550,000. Larry owes about $90,000 on his original revolving loan of $165,000 made in December of 2012. The proposed new owners, the Hamiltons, request $400,000 from the revolving loan fund, and Larry Vickery would loan them another $150,000. The city would have a first lien on the building and all personal property. The revolving loan committee recommended a $350,000 loan, and the Hamiltons provide the additional $50,000 through a secondary partner, Terry and Jeff Luker, who operate alternative finance solutions out of Nashville. The terms of the loan would be 15 years at 2%. So the recommendation was for $350,000 instead of $400,000.
Anybody have any questions of the request? And do I have a request to, a motion to approve the request? Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Also, we have the opportunity to approve a consulting agreement with Civil South Incorporated. This would be for the engineering for Phase 2 at the Peter Street project. The total cost of the engineering and surveying is $223,000. And with that, does anybody have any questions concerning the request?
No, but let me make a comment, Mr. Mayor. Eddie Peterson and Paul Worley have been taking before and after photographs and videos of this project. I'm assuming you're going to put that on our Facebook page or someplace like that. It's pretty interesting when you undergo a project of this stature. It's going to be a generational project. So if you're interested, get with City Hall and find out how to get the link on that so you can view before and after as the project moves on. They're working on the roundabout now, I believe, and it's really taking some shape.
Mayor, I might mention a few things for the record. As you mentioned, we're talking about the engineering for Phase 2, which will begin at May Street, the May Street roundabout, and terminate at Richardson Road, which is 4,750 feet. The proposal includes survey update $10,000, preliminary road design $56,600, construction documents $116,500, utilities road relocation engineering $28,000, contract documents $12,000 for a total of $223,000. The bid on Phase 1 was $1,455,000 for 3,168 linear feet, or about $460 a running foot. If this holds true, Phase 2 would be in the $2.2 million range, so engineering would be in the 10% of the bid contract price. A preliminary project schedule would be survey update complete by October 1st, 2017, preliminary road design complete by November the 10th of 17, construction documents along with utility coordination complete by the second week of February in 2018, Right-of-way and easement acquisition mid-March 2018. Utility relocation beginning January of 2018 and ending October of 2018 in conjunction with the construction. And construction beginning in March of 2018 and ending April 5th of 2019. And we all certainly look forward to the completion of Phase 1 and the starting of Phase 2.
Thank you for that additional information. With that, I'll ask if anybody has any questions or comments concerning Phase 2 of the project. Hearing none, to have a motion to approve the agreement.
Moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Also have a recommendation by Mr. Jerry Crawford, Water and Sewer Director, and this is to award a low bid for RAS pumps and WAS replacement pumps. This bid recommendation is Kesco. This low bid was $77,143. And it is well below what was in the budget for a possible figure on that, and that was $100,000 that was budgeted. Also, it is well below the next bidder, which was $136,000. So the recommendation by Mr. Crawford to approve the low bid of $77,143 to have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Jerry, what's the age of the pumps we're replacing?
They're approximately 21 years old. But if I'm not mistaken, they were replaced about a year before I came to work.
Are you getting any information on from Peer Networks of the life of these newer pumps? Is it about half? Probably.
Typically, on a submersible pump in wastewater conditions, it's about 12 years.
Yeah. Okay.
We have some that are a lot older than that.
Sure. Sure.
We've had some that failed somewhere around the same time frame.
Jerry.
We did vote, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Mr. Peterson.
I'll give our cash reports in general and utilities. In the general fund, we have $1,659,000 in total day-to-day operating cash. You might notice the $508,000 negative in golf. This is really an accounting statement to account for the losses over the last 6 or 7 years in golf. And these monies have already been accounted for, but this keeps the finance people and audit people happy. So our real cash is more like $2.1 million. Our cash reserves and cash in investments is $3,850,000, which covers our 3-month policy for operations. We still have $2.7 million in the Peter Street splosh money, which will cover Phase 1 and engineering for Phase 2 and part of Phase 3. And the completion of Phase 3 will depend on the 2018 splosh vote. In utilities, we have $4.9 million in day-to-day operational cash. Our investment reserves are earning an average of about 1.3% right now, and that varies from month to month and block of investment to investment. We're making about $200,000 a year right now with this investment, which is a far cry from when we were actually paying fees and earning a negative number each year. That's my report.
Eddie, on the golf course, when do we make the last payment on?
We've got it in this year's budget, $375,000, and then the golf debt will be gone.
When is that?
This year, 17, 18, yeah.
Now, we just finished the fiscal year. How did we do without any in-feeds of cash from general fund, just on operational?
On golf?
Yes.
We lost some because we added about $300,000 from several sources,
right.
But it was the lowest loss that we've had in years, and we had the highest number of the best green fees and cart fees we've had since 2008.
And you're talking volume when you say
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And extra kudos to David. He's done a great job. I mean, been outstanding from everybody that I've talked to.
That's it.
And with that, I have a motion to approve the cash report. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Mr. Gavinian, is there a need to go to executive session?
Just very briefly, to discuss possible litigation, pending litigation.
All right.
Pending litigation.
A motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you all
Thanks,
very
guys.
much.
Thank you, folks.
You can hang around if you want to.